The story of Byron Low-Tax Looper is one of the strangest political assassination cases in Tennessee history. Byron Anthony Looper, to give you some insight on the man himself, changed his name to Low-Tax, including the parentheses you notice in his name. In '96, Looper won the tax assessor of Putnam County by not showing up to any debates and not giving any public appearances, simply using a smear campaign with negative ads. The Cookeville Herald-Citizen newspaper regularly reported the Republican tax assessor's bizarre antics and public verbal assaults of Putnam County elected officials. The Tennessean Republican Party soon claimed no connection with Mr. Looper, even though campaign contributions and lists of paid political consultants proved otherwise. This set up his campaign against incumbent Democratic State Senator Tommy Burks. Burks had represented Putnam County in the state legislature for 28 years. He was a farmer and an old-style, conservative Southern Democrat, and he was a beloved figure in his district. He was expected to win re-election easily in 1998. But on the morning of October 19th, authorities were called to investigate a murder at the Burks farm. Tommy Burks' body was found with his head resting on the steering wheel of his pickup truck and a single bullet wound above his left eye. Burks had been speaking with his farmhand about preparing a pumpkin patch for school children who were visiting his farm that very day. Both men had seen a black car drive by the farm on multiple occasions, driven by a man in sunglasses and black gloves. The car had later sped by Rex's truck, the farmhand, allowing him to get a view of the driver. Then the farmhand noticed Mr. Looper's face on television and immediately phoned Mrs. Burks. Several people tried to have Looper's name stricken from the ballot unsuccessfully. The state Republican Party distanced itself from Looper, and to prevent Looper from winning the state Senate seat on a technicality, Burks's widow, Charlotte, was put forth as a write-in candidate for her husband's seat. Dozens of volunteers helped her campaign, including some Republicans. On Election Day, Charlotte Burks, as a write-in candidate, won the seat with 30,252 votes to Looper's 1,531. The following is the interview with Herald-Citizen reporter Mary Jo Denton on her experience during this case. First question, Mrs. Denton, before the murder, how was Byron Looper covered in the press? Her reply, before the murder, and later too, he was covered in a factual, straightforward manner, even though his constant and unusual attacks on other local office holders caused much controversy and became more and more bizarre. He issued many press releases bragging on himself and accusing others of working against him. Question 2. How did things change after the murder? After the murder, the coverage shifted to the police and the court beat, which was my beat. I had long established sources and was able to follow the case in great detail. Early the next morning, I obtained a very detailed official report on the arrest. I also covered the trial later on. Question 3, and the appeals. I don't recall much about the appeals phase. Major coverage would have decreased during that time, largely because appeals are long, drawn-out proceedings, and most often do not change the verdict. Question 4, did you cover his death in prison? After he died, I wrote a story reporting what information I could get about how he died and also summarizing his controversial time on the political stage, the horror of the assassination of Senator Burks, and the grief of this community.
So, looking at the coverage of Looper prior to the murder of Tommy Banks, how was he presented?
Tommy Burks was the epitome of a great public servant.
And how was Looper presented?
Looper, he almost became a caricature of himself because he was elected to office in Putnam County, and he went to work for a week, 2 weeks, and after that he basically phoned it in, and then he started running for another office pretty much right after he got elected to property assessor.
Was the coverage of the Burks family invasive, you think?
No, the gory stuff didn't really come out till the trial.
What did you think about the coverage of Looper after the murder?
After the murder, everybody wanted to know why he did it, and the obvious reason was because if a candidate were to die within 2 weeks of an election, the Democratic Party could not field a new candidate. The name would not be on the ballot. So what everybody wanted to know is that really why Tommy why Tommy Burks was killed, just simply to get his name off the ballot.
What did you think about the coverage of Looper's appeals?
It was sporadic, and Looper went through 14 or so different lawyers. By his last appeal, it was handwritten by him. He was his own lawyer, and it was 150 or so handwritten pages, I believe. So it was covered, but once his last appeal, about 4 or 5 years after his trial, and he exhausted his appeals, nothing was written about Looper at all until his death of a heart attack in the jail.
How was his life presented after his death?
Looper was regarded as a person of promise, but failed promise. He never lived up to his expectations of the greatness that he thought he should reach.